Well, welcome, Adam. I'm excited to have you on to the podcast and get to chat footy with you and go through your thoughts on a number of things. I want to start off with your sort of career progression. I was looking through a bit of research as we prepare for this conversation, and I loved looking through your progression through with the Dockers. You've been there for 16 years from my calculations. Just
Yep.
walk me through you start with the Fremantle Dockers and then I guess your ambition to where you are now as a development coach. Talk to us, how your career with the one club, which is really, you don't see it too often, I guess, at AFL level, where people sit the one club for the whole journey, and just a little walk through what that looked like and how that went for you.
Sure. First, thanks for having me on. It's always a great privilege to do stuff like this. I was incredibly lucky. I started out as a recruiter in 2007, and that came about through a friend's dad who was a recruiter for Freo. And so he knew I was interested in that space and he couldn't do it the next season. So he got me involved. So I was weekends only. I'd go and watch, I'm from Adelaide, so I'd go and watch SNFL, under 17s and 19s back then, and league and reserves, write reports and whatnot. And then the club was great. They'd fly you over to Melbourne to go watch national champs. And then at the end of that year, the club offered me a part-time position in Adelaide as the state recruiting manager in SA. So I did that in 2008. Then at the end of that year, again, the club was great. They flew me to Melbourne for the VFL under-18 grand final. It's the year still side bottom kick 10 in the TAC Cup grand final. Yep. And I thought I was going to get offered a full-time job in recruiting, but they offered me a split role in Perth with the recruiting and what was back then called football IT, which now goes by varying names at different clubs. Now at our club, we call it football data analytics. I made the move to Perth. I did that for 3 years. It became full-time football data and not a lot of recruiting, to be honest. During that journey, I was incredibly lucky to work with some great coaches there. Chris Scott was one of them. He was great to me, taught me a lot, especially about defense. And so I knew I'd always wanted to get into coaching. And so I started kind of dropping hints and, talking to Chris Bond, our footy manager. Simon Lloyd, when he was our head of development, was fantastic, really encouraging. And so, when Ross came on board, I got promoted into the coaching department, and we created a position which is called a coach's assistant. And we basically modeled it on a graduate assistant coach in college football.
Yep.
And so, I just help out in the track like a dog's body, try and soak up as much as I could, learn. Ross was fantastic to me. So he gave me responsibility straight away. He empowered me I had to coach the team strategy on kick-ins and defending opposition kick-ins, which was fantastic. I got thrust kind of right into it, having to present in team meetings, stuff like that. So I did that for a long I'm trying to think now, 4 years. I was also the defensive analyst, so I did all of Ross's defensive analysis. And then I moved into development. They started me out with one player. Had a guy called Ryan Nyhouse, a rookie from the Northern Territory, who was a defender. And then the next year I got a few more and then a few more, and then you blink and you've got a whole group of players. And then when JL came on board, I moved to the forward line and also gathered the responsibility of training coordinator. Been doing that for the last 3-4 years. I'm trying to think. Time flies, Jock.
Amazing, mate. No, hey, I love your journey. I think it's really awesome to watch your progression through that. Hey, just back to still sideline. What an amazing career, just quietly. And I remember that draft. He was picked 10, wasn't he? And I remember some people said he had a lot of football nous at the time, but Jesus, he's gone on and played, hasn't he? He's been unbelievable. Probably the best player in that draft. Trying to think, that was the Nick Nat Nui draft as well. Michael Hurley.
That was you had. Stephen Hill was in that draft. He was pretty good for us.
Pick 3,
injury curtailed. I'm trying to think who else.
I think it went. I'm studying this draft. One of the things I do.
Watts, Nat
Nui, Hill, Hartlett, then Hurley.
Yeah.
And then Chris Yaron, I think, was 6. I can't remember if it was 7, but no,
So,
that's interesting.
yeah, Tom Scully played that night as well as a
Oh,
bottom
did he?
major. Yeah,
Yeah.
for the Stingrays. Yeah, it was a good game.
Yeah. No, that's right. It would have been, 10 goals though, still, it's crazy. But just talk to me too about, just back through your journey. You've worked with some amazing people. What's Chris Scott, you just touched on before? Was he a standout? Obviously, do you think he's going to be anything like he's done since? Obviously, I think he spent 3 years there with you guys, and then he's
Yep.
had an amazing career at the Cats.
But it doesn't surprise me, like what
Mm.
he's gone on to do. Yeah, he was thorough. He was invested. He had a love for coaching, and tactically, he was very, very good. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. He's incredible. Someone definitely to watch down here, obviously, in Geelong here, and amazing career. Talk to me too about your journey. Do you feel you like the progression you've made? Obviously, sometimes everyone wants to do it, yesterday in terms of getting to where you are now and so forth. Do you reckon that's really set you up strong? I remember we had a conversation with Dale Tapping on this podcast, and he talked about not rushing your coaching journey, and just taking your time and developing yourself. How do you feel about that? What would your recommendation be to other coaches who are listening to this, who might be in the Coach Talent League or might be a VFL or local footy and want to progress a bit like yourself? What's your thoughts around that space in terms of taking your time and getting the experience behind you?
I think it's valuable. I was always in a rush, like always.
Yep.
Chris Bond, our footy manager, would always remind me, goes, at the time, you're a young man, you got nothing but time, like soak up as much as you can. There's no rush. And he was right. Like, I felt like I did a really long apprenticeship to get to just full-time development coaching, but it was really valuable
Yep.
because the more time you're in the system, the more people you surround yourself with, the more conversations you have. It's just a better learning experience, and you don't know what you don't know. So, like, if you're learning more, you're better equipped to walk into something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even during the start of your journey, that was the period when senior coaches in the AFL, there was a period where they were just throwing them in, weren't they, at the time? And some the carnage there with Vossi and Hurdy and a few others who went straight in. I just can't imagine getting to that sort of level coaching and not doing any assistant or development years. Is pretty much that where you sit now with the role? If you look at Justin's role and think, how could you do that straight off the bat?
Yeah, I don't know how it's possible at all. Like, it's like anything in life. Like, you have to learn from
Mm.
somewhere, and yeah, I think it's really valuable to do a good apprenticeship. Surround yourself with good people and soak in as much as you can.
It seems to be the way too at the moment. Like, you look at Craig McRae's success and basically 15 years or so in the system, developing his craft. I think that's sort of way it's sort of swinging a bit now, isn't it? I think, and even last year, a couple of the roles there, Kingsley up at there at GWS and so forth. It seems to be that the boards or the CEOs of clubs now are looking for that sort of development. And we just talked about off air about doing a level 3 these days. Like you were mentioning 10 years ago or so when you did yours, it was a weekend type thing. Nowadays, you were just mentioning it's a year long process sort of to do a course, which I think sits really well with where the football game and coaching's headed.
Oh, absolutely. And I look at, like, think about Ken Hinkley did a long apprenticeship,
Yep.
like, and well deserved. And um, you're right. For a time there, it was kind of in vogue, or a very Australian thing as well, to come straight out of playing and straight into coaching. Where I think we've learnt now, it's better off to equip people with the right tools and resources to learn their trade. But yeah, and coach education is a big thing, something I'm really passionate about, and try and help wherever I can. So yeah, if we can educate coaches as best we can, so they're equipped to walk into an environment and do their best.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess to an extent, this is where this podcast was born out of that, in terms of giving people an extra resource to help with their coaching. Just going through your development in terms of your sort of key principles now that you have for better and more consistent football. Do you have anything you might be able to share with us, and how you look at that, and your thoughts around getting the best out of your team and players?
Oh yeah, So when I made some notes, and definitely for that, like it comes back for me routine.
Yep.
Like if you can nail your Monday to Friday, your pre-training, your pre-game routine, if you make your life consistent during that period of time, your game's probably going to be consistent. So I was looking for players like, especially at AFL level, and it's still holds firm at community level or junior pathway level. For players, is their sleep consistent, their nutrition, their hydration? Are they doing stuff in their downtime? What time are they getting to the ground, or what time are they arriving at the club for training? Like, if you manage that routine and you get that consistent, it'll translate on field. I've found, like, because there's less stress involved, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It just made me think of a quote I had when I had Shane Woden on. He mentioned one of his favorite banners he put up for coaches to see would be, create great habits. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about there, about setting the standard. I think the quickest way to do this is simply just replicating what successful people at your club or you're around and just copying what they do. So I assume the leaders at your club there, if you're a young player coming in and just follow what a Nat Fyfe does or a Andrew Brayshaw, I'm sure it sets you up pretty quickly, wouldn't it, about how to go about your football? I think that's the quickest way, isn't it? And I guess the same for coaching, I guess. If you just copied what the senior coaches are doing and the guys ahead of you, it's usually a quick way, isn't it, to the old saying, if you do the same routine, same habits, you'll probably get similar results. And I think that's really true in both spaces.
Oh, absolutely. I've learned in life with most things, good role models are important. Whether it's in sport, whatever profession you're doing, or just in life. And you're right. Players come in and they look at Fyfe, they look at Andy, Caleb Strong, Hayden Young. We've got a good bunch, Alex Pearce, good bunch of young leaders that have built good habits because they learnt off Pavlich, McFarlane, Mickey Barlow, who you've had on the show, was very good. Matt DeBoer, those guys, and it just filters down, and it's no surprise. And you're right. It's the same with coaching. So obviously, I've worked with 3 different head coaches, but I've also worked with a raft of different assistants and development coaches, and it's the same thing. It's like, okay, what did I learn from Chris Scott? What did I learn from Todd Curley? What did I learn from Steve Grace? Like those guys, and you're like, okay, now I see this is the best way to actually do this. So, yeah, very valuable. Good role models, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't speak highly enough for that. Across your journey, you've obviously, like I said, you've seen a lot of coaches, work with some great ones, working with some very good ones at the moment as well. Do you have one that maybe stands out? Or it might be easier for you to say someone outside the club. Is there an AFL coach that really stands out for you that you really admire, and why is that?
Well, there's 2. I wrote down 2 here, and to me, it's John Longmire, who I've never met actually. I've never come across him. Being in Sydney, it's easy to forget about him sometimes, which I feel happens with the Swans because they've had such a great period of sustained success. I equate them; they're like the Patriots of the AFL. I don't know how they do it. Like, no one really knows how Belichick and the Patriots do it, but they do it. They've got the Bloods culture. It seems to work. So I admire that he's built this culture that's not just X's and O's, but it's behaviour and culture. Because, I've been involved a long time now, and every time we play Sydney, you're up for a fight. Like, it's going to be a tough, hard game. They're going to be a good team regardless of the personnel. So I admire that. I look forward to the day I finally get to meet him. And chew his ear off and find out what he's done. And the other one I wrote down is Chris Scott. Obviously, same thing. Geelong have had such a great period of success, but turned a list over at the same time. And Scotty's maintained that culture and done a good job of it. So, yeah, they're the 2 that kind of stand out for me.
Yeah, no, John Longmire, I don't think definitely doesn't get enough love. His coaching record is immaculate, really. He's got 4 grand finals, won a premiership, and just the way he developed that list again to make last year's grand final. I know it didn't go their way, and again this year they're right up to the next in it again, aren't they? They're back in the final 8, top 8 at the moment, and really pushing hard. So Yeah, incredible club. And then we've all obviously spoken about what the Cavs have done across their journey. Is there
Sorry, I'd also say, like, obviously, the guys I work with, like
yeah.
JL's extremely good coach, and Ross, who I worked with for 7 or 8 years, same, even, and halves back at the beginning, like, but obviously they're close to home. Those two are the ones on the outside I kind of look at and think, okay, yeah, they're doing a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a player? I actually might start off with a player I've always sort of admired from afar, and it's a pretty obvious one, but Nat Fyfe. What have you found that's really separated him from the pack and become one of the all-time greats of the AFL? And then is there a player, I love to ask every guest, is there a player that you sort of felt really exceeded their expectations, or sort of what people thought they'd get out of themselves, and how did they do that?
Sure. Yeah, well, I'll start with Fifey. Obviously, he came in and he was just a rangy, kind of skinny flanker with, some exquisite kind of a knack to find the goals and take a good mark, but fanatical work rate, like an appetite just to get to work. Doing extras in the gym. He sought out our high performance manager, Jace, at the time, because he views the game in a certain way. He's like, I need this. I need to add this to my arsenal. I need to be stronger through the lower body. So he started doing extras and become more explosive. And we all saw him grow physically. And he'd do extra touch sessions at home. He'd just seek things out outside of the program. He wouldn't just come in and do what we prescribed. It was, okay, what else can I do? He thinks outside of the box a little bit. Like, when he practices ball skills, he'll try different things. If it helps him once a game in one stoppage, well, that's a big tick. So, yeah, just the way he kind of thought about it and went about it, that's why he's been so good. And to the second part, player that's kind of exceeded, I wrote down two in my time at Freo. One of them is Matt DeBoer.
Yep.
Again, just his desire and effort to improve every day. He was still he made All Australian under 18, but ended up getting rookie listed and, probably labelled with not as talented as other people, but he could still play the game. But what made him great, he was a great teammate. He gave himself to the team. He was a real team-first guy, whatever role was needed. And that's why guys love playing with him. But he also had a huge work ethic to improve himself. I know in the summer you'd go down to one of the ovals here and he'd be doing extra running sessions with Tendai. And Tendai is one of the best runners of his generation in the game. And consequently, Matt comes back at the next preseason and smashes his PB because he finds a way to push himself. Okay, if I train with Tendai, I'm going to get better. And the other one I wrote down was Zach Dawson. I feel like Zach doesn't get enough credit. He probably, and he'll admit it, he's not the greatest ball skills going around, but he was such a good teammate. And he's probably the greatest come forward to defend player I've ever seen. Like, his ability to read the play and make that decision to come off his man and impact. And he'd probably hate me bringing this up, but the toe poke, he actually comes off his man there.
I know.
And it is perfect. It is the perfect play. But his ability to better himself, to understand the game, same, he did things differently, but his way. So he was always very well prepared on his opposition, physically well prepared, and knew what his strengths were, and also knew what his weaknesses were, and brought his teammates into the game if he needed to. But he got the best out of himself. He was a fantastic player.
Yeah, it's fantastic, across those three examples. But I want to discuss with you your thoughts on, I loved how you went into Nat Fyfe and Matt and talked about the extra work they did outside of the program. Where do you sit with that, with players doing the extra work? Sometimes here at the Falcons, with obviously the Coates League, they sort of prescribe a bit. The 3 sessions during preseason is sort of almost enough. Like, they don't want them doing too much more outside of that in terms of don't overload them so they can't perform in the next session. Where do you sit with that with players and advising players about how much work to do away from the club, particularly the physically, whether it be extra weight sessions or running sessions? How's that sit with you, and what's your advice to players wanting to do that extra work?
Well, my advice is consult the experts.
Yep.
So say, like my example with Nat, he wanted to get stronger, so he went to the head of high performance and he said, okay, what can I do? Like, what is physically possible for me to do? Same with Matt. If I want to get fitter, what's possible for me to do? Okay, make sure I do my sessions with Tendai. But when it comes to ball work, like, the world's your oyster. You can do a lot of stuff without having it be too taxing physically. But again, if you're ever worried about something, check in. Ask the people that are writing the programs or helping you out. And a good coach will do whatever it takes to help you get better. There are times, obviously, where you have to say, hey, no, I don't think this running session you should do. You're on like a load or a deload week, but why don't you make it up with a touch session or something like that? So just consult the experts.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Just touch base with your club and what they're doing. And I think you're spot on. I think with the skills aspect, it is something you could probably just do to a high volume outside of normal conditioning type programs within your club. It's interesting, actually. I was just been reading, as everyone does, but reading a lot about the Chicago Bulls back in the day with Jordan and that, and they had the breakfast club, which was basically a morning training session. Scotty and MJ would do, and I just it makes you think about how much the body can. The great ones seem to be able to absorb that extra training and really helps them on game day. And if you're looking at any other thing with training, in terms of any myths and mistakes, is there anything that really comes to mind for you?
Yep. I'll touch on the extra thing you were just talking about then. I remember, again, this job's been so good. I've been afforded a lot of great opportunities, and one of them's travel overseas to go to other teams and meet other coaches. And I remember one day being at the Toronto Raptors, and it was their day off, the players' day off, and they were all there.
Yeah.
And there was a guy, Fred Van Vliet, who I'm not sure if he's still with them, but turned out to be a very good player for him. He was just shooting and shooting and shooting. And I said to the coach, he's been out there for ages. Like, isn't there some kind of like load management or whatever? And then their high performance guy said, well, if his body's not in any danger, like if you watch him move, everything's adapting and it's in line with his strength program and his weights and his nutrition and stuff like that. No problem. Like, as long as it's functional movement. If he starts doing crazy stuff outside of it, then we're in a bit of trouble. But if you look at him there, he's sitting within the perfect physical parameters. So it's the same with us. If you're going to do some handballing or kicking and it's all functional game-like movement, then you should be okay. The body should adapt. But if you start doing crazy stuff, well, that's when you're in trouble. As far as the myths and mistakes in training, I wrote two down here. The first one is probably something a lot of coaches have maybe spoken to you about, but obviously cone to cone, isolated skill technique drills, where, obviously we try and steer clear of them. We do a lot of small-sided games, decision making, and I guess it's the age-old argument with those kind of things. All the research obviously points to, you've got to make sure that decision making and skill execution are kind of rooted into the same drill. There's a great podcast, I'm not sure if you've come across it, called the Perception Action podcast by Rob Gray.
No, I haven't actually.
This guy, he's a lecturer, professor at the University of Arizona in America, and he's written a good book, How We Learn to Move, and he gets a lot of great guests on, and he's had Australian people on that talk about skill acquisition in AFL and stuff like that. And the idea is perception action are coupled. So the theory is you can't learn an isolated skill and then just plug yourself in a game and you're going to be proficient at that skill, because all of a sudden you've got 35 other objects on a football field with time and space. So, yes, we try and stick clear of cone-to-cone drills and create small-sided games. There's a great book, actually, The Myths of Sports Coaching, and there's a chapter in that on how we learn fundamentals, because you can incorporate learning fundamentals into little games. The other couple others I thought of were, activities with no purpose or problem to solve, and that's based around cone to cone. If you're just running to a spot, as opposed to we'll give you a space and different numbers or a different objective. And don't be afraid to teach shape and space to kids, I think. Like, if the reading I've done on soccer, they start teaching them about formations and shape at quite a young age. And of course, kids are like sponges. So, let's not forget that. So when it comes to AFL, we kind of almost forget that. And it's like, oh, yeah, but the good kid's a good kid. He knows to run to the right spot. And it's like, well, why don't we teach the others about, holding some width or, not just chasing the ball. So that's a good one. And then the other big bucket item for me is just make activity engagement. So it's easy to do a training session and just go, okay, we're doing this drill now, run out to your spots. And then we finish the drill, whistle blows, okay, we're going to the next one. Well, set up the drill, get them in their groups. How are you going to attack this drill? And let them figure out how they're going to solve the problem. Get them to do the activity, bring them in, what worked, what didn't work, give them another go. Don't just tell them, okay, no, you didn't lead there, Ask questions, guiding questions. Okay, why didn't you get the ball? Or why did you score on that play? Or why did you intercept that? And let them figure it out. I think they're probably the two big bucket items, just making sure we get lots of small-sided games and good engagement. Obviously, I understand it's hard with kids, especially really young kids. When they get to a certain age, it's obviously a lot easier to facilitate those group questioning sessions. But
yeah, no, I love that. I really love that. Your point around let them solve it and let them work it out for themselves and come back to you and lead, you could definitely ask those sort of guiding and leading questions. Do you and what sort of, just you did touch on a bit age wise, are you just there thinking like into the youth sort of football and beyond? Because like I do a lot of camps with sort of junior footballers, 10, 12-year-olds, and I still think that they could do a fair bit of this. Like, is that fair from your point of view?
Yeah, I think so. And it's when we design drills, the term we use is challenge point, right? So obviously the challenge points in our drills can be quite hard. So when you're working with young kids, I know Simon Eastor, who used to be on our coaching staff, was telling me he coaches his son's team, and he's like, yeah, I've got them doing hit grids, and he goes, I started them out like 7v2. So there's 7 on attack, 2 on defense. So the challenge point, say if you were adults, is really low there. You can just chip that around and the 2 will never get it back. But with kids, obviously the skills aren't quite as good and they need time and space. And he goes, now we're up to 7v4.
Yeah.
And so you just keep changing it as they learn and develop those skills, but it still gives them more game-like kicks than just going cone to cone, like lane to lane. So it's about designing the right activities, but kids can handle it. Yeah, we kind of forget how quick they can learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think of other sports too, how intense they are and how high a level kids get to. You think of swimming, like they're world champions, a number of them at 16, 17, and they're absolute guns, like 13 or 14, gymnastics. My family was in horse riding. They're really good riders. Some kids are really good at 9, 10, 11. Like they're really, really, really capable. And just actually made a point too, just going back to our extras. I was reading about, I like rowing as well. And I was reading about the Kiwi pair. I don't know if you've heard of them before. Hamish. Eric Murray and Hamish Bond. Basically the best duo pretty much ever to row throw the pair as in the rowing. So we won 2 Olympics, I think 2012, 2016, and basically unbeatable. But long story short, like you got to remember, I guess at your level, like and at any high level, like these guys are so highly fit. Like their warm-ups were incredible. Like just to get warmed up. Apparently, like people were just mind blown how hard they went in their warm-ups. But the reality is they're the fittest people on the planet. And just the level they had to go and to go beyond the program is probably what I'm getting back to with us talking about what was in the program. These guys went so far beyond that. People thought they were a bit crazy about what they were doing, but long story short, they become the greatest ever. And if you YouTube their races at, London Olympics, they're absolutely smashing the other teams. So it is incredible how much these guys can do. And back to your basketball point earlier, even about how much extra work. I guess once you're at the pointy end of the business, it's amazing how much you can do.
It is. As I said, if it's within the right parameters, the body will just adapt. Like that, our high performance guys who in my journey have been excellent have always been welcoming of extras for us. Again, as long as there's a good consultation, like, hey, this is what I want to get better at. This is what I want to do. Well, fine, let's figure out a way to do it. When it's collaborative, like it works. And if you want to get better at your set shot goal kicking, like, well, let's find a way to get 50 extra shots in. So it doesn't bother you, whatever's going on with you, whether it's a groin or a quad or nothing. There's always ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I'm always interested in too, football and the workload regarding sort of youth football coming through the system, as I just touched on, there's other sports that just the volume of work they do is far beyond what footballers do in general. Touched on a few of them: rowing, cycling, running, swimming, equestrian. They do massive amount of volume. Do you think football, there might be an opportunity for football to step it up through 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds? I know a lot of people are against that, but geez, they do some work. Like some swimmers, they're doing 8, 9, 10 sessions a week at 13, 14, 15 years old. Where do you see all that going? Do you think there's some space there to take it up a notch?
I'd be talking out of school there, Jock, to be honest. I don't know enough about that age group and what they're physically kind of capable of, but a sports scientist would probably happily delve into that with you. But when you were that young, like, I mean, I remember I was playing like 2 games a weekend, and you seem to do a fair bit anyway. I'm not sure what it's like today, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. Maybe a conversation for another day. Adam, do you have any favorite books or documentaries? You mentioned a couple. Do you have a couple that you recommend listeners check out?
When I saw this question, I'm like, how am I going to condense this answer? Because I love reading, and I also love watching stuff. So I've broken the books into 2 categories. One is like talent and skill acquisition. These are the books I recommend. You've probably read a couple of them already. Talent Code by Dan Coyle, yep. Bounce by Matthew Said, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, yep, The Sports Gene and Range by David Epstein. I particularly loved Range, and Peak by Anders Ericsson, who's he passed away last year, but he's the expert on experts. I'll come back to them if you want. And the other category for books is Culture, Legacy by James Kerr about the All Blacks. I thought was brilliant. Captain's Class by Sam Walker, a good one on leadership. And I would say this is almost the best book I've read, Belonging by Owen Eastwood. I'm not sure if you've read it, but it's a fantastic book.
Someone recommended it. I can't actually remember who that was, but yeah, I haven't read it. Someone on a list. Getting longer by the day, but that's some great recommendations. No, some rippers, Outliers. Malcolm Gladwell's a ripper too. I was just, as you're going through those, there's some excellent ones, and definitely a few I haven't checked out, so I'll have to get onto those. Docos, yeah.
Yeah, I wrote these down again. I couldn't condense myself. I apologize, but
no, love it.
Obviously, Hard Knocks is fantastic.
Fantastic.
The first episode of the Jets the other night was actually really good.
Is that online now? Actually, I was talking about this when this was coming on. So the first one's up, is it? Great.
Yep, it's up. the All or Nothing series, the NFL, the Rams. I found the Rams. I love Sean McVay. So, and the EPL. I thought the EPL ones on Man City with Pep Guardiola was fantastic, and the Tottenham one with Jose Mourinho was very interesting. The Last Dance, obviously, really good. Quarterback, which is a recent one,
Yeah, that's good.
really good. Then I wrote here, if anyone's a subscriber to NFL Game Pass, and I think there's a couple of them on YouTube, the Football Life documentaries.
Yeah, I'm a fanatic on these ones, mate.
Yeah,
I watch them on replay. They're that good. Yeah,
they are. Particularly, I wrote down here my favourites were Paul Brown,
yeah. But go on.
Bill Walsh, Chuck
Yep.
Noll, and Bill Belichick. They're probably the standout ones for me.
Yep.
And then my last couple of recommendations are anything with, because I'm a Patriots fan and Belichick, anything with them in it. So the two Bills, about him and Bill
That's
Parcells.
I watched it again the other day. It's on repeat. That's a ripper.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
fantastic. Belichick and Saban, him and the Alabama coach Nick Saban.
Oh, did they do a doco together?
Do your job.
That? Did they do a doco?
Yeah, and it's an ESPN one. Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
I think did I see a bit of that? Maybe I have seen a bit of that actually. Yeah, I think I might have seen a bit of that. But awesome. Yeah, those two absolute.
Yeah, because Belichick, Saban coached at the Naval Academy with Belichick's old man Steve, so they've known each other since they were kids. And then the Do Your Job series, the Patriots Do Your Job series, is fantastic. And then Tom Brady, I thought Tom versus Time is amazing. I'm not sure if you've seen that one.
Yeah, that's about all the rings, isn't it?
And The Man in the Arena.
Oh man! Oh, so the two
Tom versus
different ones.
Time.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah,
I've seen the Man in the Arena ones.
Time, he goes through like,
Sorry.
Tom versus Time, he goes through the mental game, the physical game, the family game. It's really good because they're only short episodes, but he kind of references the holistic approach to his football and his life. And then I wrote down, this is my last one, I promise. I think every coach player should watch. It's not about sport, but I think they should watch Band of Brothers and the Pacific miniseries to learn about brotherhood, connection, resilience, teamwork, leadership. I'm not sure you could get a better example of leadership than Lieutenant Richard Winters in Band of Brothers.
What's that on? Is that Netflix? Band of Brothers?
Oh, that is a good question. I own the Blu-rays, so
okay,
I just watch it on that.
Good, yeah,
it's on something. Yeah, the book is excellent as well.
Excellent as well. I have heard of it. I'd love that. I'd definitely check that myself. I'm sure listeners as well. No, that's some amazing ones there. I'll actually just throw out for listeners, since it's semi-final game tomorrow in the soccer, the Matildas doco is worth a watch too on on Disney. I watched about 4 episodes last night. I'm a very late getting on the train. First game I watched was on Saturday night. So but no, it's interesting watching how they all go about it too, and they're just professional athletes and the way they prepare and come together as a team, and just they talked a little bit about they're only getting a few days together each year, and they've got to come together and perform at a high level and trying to get that chemistry and connection and build that relationships. And it's worth checking out too if you get the chance after you spent 16 days watching your docos. And
there's a lot there.
There's a few beauties though. No, I love that. Final question for you, Adam, and thank you very much for your time. If I give you a banner that you can put up on all coaches' doors that they're going to see day in, day out, what would you have written on that?
I've thought about this one. I saw this question, and I've got a couple. You can tell I need to be more decisive in condensing things.
I love it.
But one of the things especially in professional sport, I stole this line. I'm a huge movie nerd from Saving Private Ryan.
Yep.
At the end, when they save him, he says, "Earn this." And so I think every day when you come in professional football, earn this opportunity. What that looks like for each person is different and how it manifests. But I think it's a good one, earn this, especially, I feel very fortunate to be in the position I am. So I kind of like that one. Another couple I like, again, you steal them or find them from anywhere. I like Bruce Arians, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Bucks, or ex-head coach. No risk it, no biscuit. Have a dip, and Another one I like is from Belichick. You can't win a war by digging a ditch. You got to get up and attack at some stage. So have a go.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, hey, Adam, awesome to have you on. Go through a conversation all on football, different parts. Love that. I'm sure listeners got a lot out of it. All the best for the rest of the season for you guys, and going forward. And I'm sure we'll chat soon down the track.
Thanks, Jock. Thanks for having me. I think this is a great initiative. You're doing great things. So, and I've seen some of the guest role. It's fantastic. Some of the guys and girls you're getting on. So great work.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate that.